Hi, everybody. Welcome back to RVAsec 2023. Chuck Harold, SecurityGuyTV.com at the Omni Motel. My next guest, what's your name, sir?
It's Qasim Ijaz.
And what's the name of your company?
I represent Bluebastion Security.
Bluebastion. All right. Now, today we're going to talk about what makes a good penetration test. You know, when I asked that at Black Hat 10 years ago, it meant something totally different. It's changed, right?
It has changed quite a bit over the years.
And people used to do it once a year.
Yeah.
I think they're doing once a week. I mean, everything's changed on that. It's kind of interesting. How have we shown progress in this? How have we gone from 10 years ago to now? What's going on?
So 10 years ago, as you mentioned, yes, we used to do once a year. And now we are seeing people talk about doing it once a quarter or once a week. In the end, when it comes to showing progress in that, it has been we have gone from just showing the vulnerabilities to now I'm seeing organizations do impact. They aren't just talking about that you have a bad password. Because the industry has gone from having more MFA now, you are going to end up showing what it actually meant to have obtained that password. What I was able to do with that password is what we are showing in terms of progress. So you have gone on the consulting end from having just a few pen tests, you come in once a year, do the same thing every year, to being more ingrained. On the receiving end, you're expecting better reports now.
Interesting. Okay, more in-depth, detailed.
Yeah.
Actionable.
Actionable
something
reports.
You can do something when instead of just read it and give it to your boss.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Don't just tell me that you guessed my password. Do something with it.
So your second point is open the freezer. Don't just tell me you guessed a password. What did you do with the password?
Exactly.
I mean, that's how old reports were written. It said you had this many password breaches, but what happened?
Exactly,
Yeah.
because the report is not just a vulnerability scan output, right? We aren't just trying to show the client that you have 500 unpatched systems. That doesn't really mean anything anymore because I have to spend a lot of money fixing those systems and I cannot fix all 500 at the same time. So I need to know what is most impactful, what really causes issues. So if I have MFA and that's protecting me from bad passwords, if I have a good EDR, show me that even with all that, you were able to do something. And if you were able to do something even with all that, that's what I probably want to fix first. Yeah.
Now you talk about tailoring the test to the client's needs and environment. I guess back in the old day, I mean, I knew people that were, quote, pen testers. All they did was take some class, hang a shingle, go out and say, push the button. You know what? I did that with PC Tools in 1994, okay? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, back in the day, those old programs you had.
Give me old memories now.
Exactly, right. So what's a typical penetration test, and why don't those typical tactics work anymore?
Yeah, I mean, you're right about that. We used to be able to do quite a bit with some very basic things, and nowadays we have to tailor things to the client. It takes me back to my days when I used to work in healthcare industry. And we had a consulting firm come in, and they gave us a vulnerability saying they were able to find patient information and very sensitive information about the doctors. And what they really found was NPIs, that is National Provider ID, or often also mentioned National Public Provider ID.
Okay.
So they didn't know much about our business model. They didn't know what work we needed, and they just ran the typical go from point A to point B test. So tailor it to the client's needs so you know if they need something that is PCI specific. Tailor it so they know you know what kind of environment they have. Your typical internal pen test isn't going to work if everybody's working from home and they have a Mac. There is no AD in there. My talk later is about AD.
Okay.
It's kind of ironic, but if the organization is all Mac systems working from home, how's your typical responder, your typical password spray going to help? It's not. So understand the client's environment and tailor to it. That checkbox, here's our menu, pick an item from it, that doesn't work very well for the 2023 environments.
So you're giving a lecture at RSA. What will people walk away from after your lecture? What will they know that they didn't know before?
My job through that lecture is to make my own job more difficult. That's what I want to do.
That's
good.
good.
I want you to make sure that I cannot have a good time in your networks.
Right.
So in that talk, people will walk away with kind of the secret sauce. Here are the things that I am doing most commonly to gain access to patient data, to gain access to domain admin. And here are the things you can do to waste my time, because you're deploying deception, right? To find issues before I even come in. And I'm going to show the tools that we use and try to give advice into what I think works best.
How much do you think the personnel shortage is contributing to, the cybersecurity personnel is contributing to some of these problems? We're automating a lot. AI is supposed to solve all these problems. I think it's going to be our demise, frankly. It's a different opinion. But are people just cyber fatigued and they just can't keep up, and so they just throw their hands up and say, you know what, I know there's probably 500 things in my network, but you know what, nothing happened. I'm going to wait for something to happen. Is that what they do?
That does happen sometimes, but if you look around in here, the conference, and many other cybersecurity conferences we go to, how many providers are there? They're solving a very specific problem. We have hundreds of providers that are doing very specific things.
Right, very small things.
Small things, yeah. And there's no like a framework of provider. There's no provider that is doing most of the things for the blue team. On the red team, we have free tools that do amazing things.
Oh.
On the blue team, you're spending millions to buy a tool. You are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to do a pen test, and those providers are just handing you stuff and walking away.
Yeah.
You want to talk to us more? Give us more money is what ends up happening. So yes, there is fatigue. Not only the fatigue of how much stuff I have to fix, but the fatigue of how many tools I need to look at to find what's happening in my network.
I find a lot of analogies. I came from physical security and police work, and I taught myself cyber, right? Guess what? They're both the same. Mm-hmm. This convergence idea, if you weren't thinking of convergence 30 years ago, you don't know what you're talking about, right? But when you say things like that, I think of the guard business. Mm-hmm. I put a guard on your post, you pay me, and I walk away. Literally.
Yeah.
And then when the guy does something wrong, then you call me as a client to fix it. There's a lot of parallels between physical and cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. The cybersecurity people have become, for lack of a better term, the complacent physical security people. It's really interesting. Maybe the nature of security just makes you eventually default to throw your hands up and say, you know what, I don't know.
So I love that you mentioned that. The complacency is such a big problem today. We have focused so much on the tool, on the technical fun side of security.
Right.
But we aren't understanding what we are doing and not explaining that to the side. So what I mean by that is, if I give you a pen test report, and I just do that 1 hour debrief, we just jumped on a call, and I showed you a few things I did. How much of value is that going to provide you long term? Versus if I have conversation with you, if I have a conversation before I come in and do the security work, if I have conversation afterwards, and we continue that conversation, just talk, right? Just have those conversations, build that relationship. You'll find that what I may have found may not be as applicable next year, or maybe I can help you make that not applicable. I don't want to come back the next year and see the same thing. And if I do see the same thing, if I see complacency, I think as a security provider, that's my fault. That's not the client's fault.
That's a great perspective, yeah.
Maybe I didn't explain things well, right? Maybe I need to do something different.
Mr. Ijaz from bluebastion.com, a lecturer here at RVAsec. RVAsec. Sorry, Jake. Sorry, dude. All right. Good to meet you, my friend. Good
Likewise.
stuff. Good stuff.
Thank you
a
very
fresh
much.
approach. I really like it.
Appreciate that.
Back in a minute here.